Welcome to yet another episode of Started. This is getting better and better with time.
Cannot agree with you more, Anil. And today, who do we have? It's a Harvard Stanford graduate who took to numbers very early in her career, has donned on executive leadership roles at Audax and Katerra and also Paxion, to name a few. Now she has bootstrapped her own startup, Recalc Academy. This is none other than Katie Fifer. You continue to inspire me, Katie. Welcome.
Welcome,
Thank you.
Katie.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'll start off with a very basic question today, and that is, could you give us some insights into your journey so far and beyond?
Sure, I will do my best. So my journey so far, if I think back on what I've been up to since I started my career, there's really one North Star that I've had, which is optimize for people. So as long as I've been working with good people and learning a lot, I've been happy. And I've had kind of a winding journey beyond that, but that's the tie that binds. So I started off my career in investing. I worked for a private equity firm and then subsequently worked for a family office, venture capital and private equity investing. And at both of those places, I had the opportunity to learn from wonderful people. The first stop in my career was great for teaching young analysts and associates all the basics of private equity. And through that, I got to meet also lots of executives from different businesses and see how they were making decisions, CEO decisions, CFO decisions in the businesses that they were running. So it was an amazing education to start off my career. I then had the good fortune of working for a number of very experienced investors and entrepreneurs who put together a family office called Paxion Capital. And it was there that I got a much broader exposure to a variety of investing. So early stage investing, as well as later stage investing, as well as some real estate. And just while I was in the middle of learning as much as I thought was possible, I got involved with one of our portfolio companies, which was founded by the same partnership, called Katerra. And Katerra took off in a way that none of us could have ever imagined at the time, when there were 10 people in a shared office in a basement when it got started. And it grew to become a over 7,000 person company with operations across the United States, as well as India, Saudi Arabia, and Dubai. And while I didn't have an operating background prior to that, I had gotten involved with the company because I was involved in all of the M&A that we did. So that was my background. And so as the company did acquisitions, the management team would call me in to say, hey, can you help with this acquisition? And through that, I got a peek inside to the company. And I got really intrigued with, okay, how do you create something like that? And how do you build something from nothing really, really rapidly and meet the customer's demands and do something innovative like that? And I sort of got the bug, I guess, got addicted to being inside of the company, not just outside looking in. It's one thing when you're an investor and you can come with, lots of ideas and you can say, hey, I saw this from some other company. Let me connect you to this other person. Let me bring some capital to the table. But that's very different than actually being in the company, trying to do it every day. And I will say I have a much greater appreciation now that I've spent some time in various companies for how hard it is to get anything done in real life and how easy it is to sit in the investor seat and say, hey, why don't you just do X? It's like, okay, I know, but do you know how hard it is to just do X? So that's been an interesting part of the journey as well. And I spent a few years working in various operating roles in Katerra. I followed one of my main mentors overseas. He moved from California over to Dubai to lead both our India and Saudi Arabia businesses. India, which was an acquired business that we were growing further, and Saudi, which we were starting from scratch. And so I followed him, not really knowing what I was getting into, but knowing that I'd be working for and with great people, and had the best learning experience I could have ever imagined on every dimension. And I would recommend to anybody that has the opportunity to work abroad or take a leap like that, it's well worth it, because you get to learn and enjoy on both a work front, growing a business like that, but also a personal front, language, food, culture, people, hopefully lifelong friends. And so I felt really fortunate to have had that opportunity. And then if I fast forward to where I am today, I recently left Katerra to start Recalc Academy. And that really came organically from observations that I had while I was at Katerra. So when I was running different teams, I saw that there was this major gap between what teams, regular finance teams, HR professionals, supply chain professionals know in terms of this very basic tool, which is spreadsheets, and all the analysis that goes on in spreadsheets versus what we got taught in investing. So what what is taught in investment banking and consulting and those kinds of roles. And I felt like there was this opportunity to bring those skill sets to a corporate setting. And in doing so, hopefully set up people and teams and their managers for greater success in things that we do all the time, but maybe have never been formally trained in. So that was kind of the dawn of Recalc Academy. And since then, I've been really focused on trying to make that successful, which is challenging every day, but a lot of fun.
Nice. So Ivy League schools, followed by executive management roles, now as the founder, CEO of a company. That's quite a bit in a very short span of time that you have accomplished, Katie. But I'm sure you would have had a topsy-turvy ride, a whole bunch of challenges, and possibly a rock-solid approach in solutioning them. It will be great if you can lay out your most challenging episode and how you approached it and how you solved it.
Sure. So I certainly don't have all the answers. I don't think anyone does, but I definitely don't. But when I think about this question, so what's been most challenging? I mean, there's lots of things that flash through my mind. There's challenges every day, but I'd say the most daunting task, or the task I felt was most daunting in front of me, was when we started working in Saudi Arabia at Katerra. So it was a new market that few of us on the team had prior experience in. And we had a tremendous contract from our customer that we were fortunate to have, and that had, our differentiator was that we were going to execute better and faster than anybody else. So if you think about that, okay, how do you start off in a new market? And we had innovative technology that we were bringing, and we had a talented team that we were bringing and building in the country, but it was a really daunting task ahead. How do we navigate this? And what I was, I guess, fortunate to do, but has been kind of a theme throughout my career, is I really tried to figure out, okay, for my areas of responsibility, how can I find people that know a lot more than I do that I can trust? It's basically as simple as that. Because if you find those people and you inspire them to work on whatever it is that you're working on, the rest gets to be a lot simpler. And so, I was fortunate to have some network to draw upon and articulate what it was that I was looking for, and came across some really fantastic people who, if you come to today, are what I would consider lifelong friends. But the journey to find them and then start working with them really just started by picking up the phone and calling people that I thought might know somebody great to work with, and then getting them excited about what we were doing at Katerra, which is certainly a team effort, not just me. And then them getting so excited about it that they joined full time, from being an outside advisor helping us out, they got the bug also, and then joined us. And so through that, we were able to build a great team. And I'm really grateful for that. And then I think when I look at what challenges came down the line, so we thought starting off was hard, but I think everybody in 2020 has faced a lot of challenges that were unlike any year prior. And that was no different for us in our business. So when COVID happened, we had 2,000 employees in the country on our visas, mostly in our housing. And our number one priority was, how do we keep our team safe? And, secondarily, how do we continue to operate and deliver for the customer? And so, when I think about how did we manage to deal with that as a team, there's so many people on the team that stepped up and just did whatever it took. And, whether that was they were, personally going to the store to get supplies to bring to our sites, and these are executives. These aren't, of course it's everybody on the team, but all the way up to the executive level, and nobody having kind of too much pride to do what it took to make it successful. But when I rewind and think about how we started, that's also how we started. And so that culture was already there when we really needed it. I remember when we were bringing the first group of team members into our first site, it was the night before, and we still didn't have all of our bunk beds set up. And this was long predating COVID, but I remember our head of legal, who's very talented, accomplished executive, who probably hadn't assembled a bunk bed in a really long time, if ever, out there, like rolling up his sleeves, assembling bunk beds, putting mattresses on them, making the beds so that our team would show up and have a great first impression of a company that cared about them, as we did. Despite the fact that, a normal amount of startup chaos was going on the ground. And so it was that culture that allowed us to overcome, I think, the real challenges that came along the way when some of the aspects that hit us in 2020. So that's probably one snapshot of at least a challenging time that I'm grateful to have been surrounded by good people.
Awesome. That's a wonderful journey. I've been in Saudi early 2000, and it's not an easy country to survive. Anyways, so you have been in venture capital for a long time, and I've always been intrigued by how you guys look at the business. I want to know, what is that you look at when you invest in a startup? So how do you decide which one to invest and which one not to? I mean, is there any metrics or anything specific that you look at?
So I think it's hard to generalize, of course, but there are three kind of core things when any venture capitalist is looking at a new business. First, they want to understand, okay, what is being solved here? So what's the problem, and who's the customer that feels that is a problem? And a slight twist on that is, okay, the problem being solved, are you selling an aspirin or a vitamin? So they both have, there's a market for both, but when you're a startup, it's got, the more ways you can stack things in your favor, the better. And I think most venture capitalists feel selling an aspirin is going to be more compelling than selling a vitamin, because the customer really, really needs it to solve a pain point, as opposed to a nice to have. So that's number one. Number two is this a sufficiently large market? And while some of the slides on market size and stuff can seem goofy, what you're really trying to understand is, if this company is successful, even to a fraction of what it expects to be successful in, can it become a really large and valuable company? Because the whole nature of the venture business is to make a lot of bets that are not super likely to succeed. And so you have a bunch of zeros, but then you have to have the 1, 2, 3 deals that totally make the fund. They return the entire fund. And so the only way for that to be true is for it to have the potential to be a really large business. I would say if it's going to be a smaller, nice, profitable business, venture capital might not be the way to go, maybe some other kind of capital source, but that's what a venture capitalist will look for. And then finally, they'll say, okay, why you? Why is this a team that can solve this? And, in many cases, you see venture capitalists back existing teams they've backed before, they know, or that have been successful. But when it's that team, that hasn't had that success before, oftentimes they can display a real hunger and a real understanding of the problem that they're solving, and an ability to build a great team, however it is that they're going to get there. And that can get the venture capitalist over the hump to make that bet on that team. So those are really the three things I think that, that go across investments, no matter what the field is for venture capitalists.
Awesome. So the reason I asked that question is there are many entrepreneurs who would like to know how to prepare for an investment. So would you have any tips for them to keep in mind while preparing for a VC pitch?
I do. At the risk of criticizing myself and others like me, I would say we are all guilty of having a very short attention span. So imagine the attention span is gone in less than 30 seconds. Have you communicated what you really wanted to communicate? If the answer is yes, great. They'll probably ask more follow-up questions. You'll have more opportunity. But the best thing I could say is just refine your pitch so that you can really lead with what's most compelling. And that could be a really exciting statistic about how people are using your product, or it could be hey, here's the problem we're solving. You can approach it different ways, but make sure it's super compelling right off the bat, and then the rest can flow from there.
Okay, awesome. So now coming to a very specific question, Katie. You are now a founder of Recalc Academy, a edtech startup, and I know you're taking the design first approach for this. What made you do that? Coming from a background of crunching numbers, what is your take on the design first approach, and how you think it is important for a startup to take this up?
Absolutely. So it's obvious to me that design is super important. It's also obvious to me that I don't know the first thing about design. So step number one is find people that really do understand design, and then try to learn as much as possible from them. That's the path, the journey I would say I'm somewhere in the early innings of. But why do I think it's important? I mean, at the end of the day, the numbers just report what has already happened, right? That's very much rear view looking. And of course you can put a forecast together, but it's not accomplishing anything other than understanding your business. But to actually be a business, you have to have something that customers want. You're solving some problem that they have. And to me, design is all about communicating with that customer, working with that customer so that they see that what it is that you're offering and how it is that you're offering it to them meets their need in terms of addressing their pain points. So whether that's a beautifully designed website that they can navigate really quickly and understand what it is that you're doing and see the call to action and act upon it, that's just the first step. But then how do you design the entire way that you're offering your service? And we're experimenting with a lot of different means of engagement with our customer. And there's a big design element that goes into that. What's all the subsequent communication with the customer? So I would say I'm in the very, very beginning step of that, but I'm trying to surround myself with people that know a lot more than I do, and learn as much as I can from them.
Awesome. So do you have any tips for us now that Terralogic Lollypop is in Middle East and we are here to build a nice, beautiful, sweet story? So I'd like to hear your tips, your thoughts on Middle East.
Middle East. I love and miss the Middle East. So I left in March due to COVID and my family being here, but I plan to return before too long. Personally, I really enjoy it. And I think it's for a few reasons. I think, first of all, it's an incredibly diverse place. And obviously there's many countries that make up the Middle East, but within any of the ones I've spent time, there's a tremendous amount of diversity of, nationalities, ideas, on every dimension. I think there's a lot of diversity. So to me, that's just something that draws me to the Middle East, and so much history and so many positives. In terms of doing business in the Middle East, I think my biggest takeaway, probably the thing that's the most different from doing business in the US, is that it's not as transactional as the US in many respects. So if you have a meeting, people are interested in, like, who are you? Who is your family? What have you been up to? And in the US, you can get on a phone call and they're like, so going to paragraph 5, like the red line says, you just cut right through all of that. Like max, you'll get some discussion about the weather in X state while you wait for so-and-so to join the Zoom. It's just very different culturally. And I think India is somewhere in between. India also has a lot more feel and touch in terms of, people and family and, all of that kind of stuff. And so I think, that's a really nice thing that I've tried to take away a little bit from the Middle East. You just connect with people a little bit more. And so I think as long as that connection and true interest in other people, it's not just to do it for the sake of doing it. It's just an interest in understanding who is it that you're working with, whether it's in your own company or in other companies that you're working with. And I think that just pays dividends down the road, and in both enjoying life and your work, and then also, of course, in business.
That's a wonderful tip, Katie. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Katie. This was really insightful, very honest, very modest, and very practical approaches that you have given. The key takeaways personally for me were surrounding yourself with more enlightened people in a particular domain to be successful, following your mentors, learning. I think this was very good. Thank you so much for your time and insights. And I am sure we will bring more of such episodes in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Katie. It was a wonderful session. Thank you.
Thanks so much.